Type Podcasts, episode 7. My name is Simeon.
Hey, it's Ben.
And Dale.
So, I want to talk about some Apple news at the moment. I don't know if you guys know about ARM chips. They're Apple's sort of version of Intel's silicon-based CPUs. And there's been some rumours for a little while now, sort of ever since 2012, they sort of popped up, but only really in the big rumour community around Apple beginning to develop their own chips for the MacBooks first, and then hopefully even all desktop Mac devices. So the ARM chips are basically going to be replacing the Intel silicon chips and the CPUs inside the Macs. And Apple from the start has been using chips inside their own chips that they develop inside the iPhone and iPads. These are the A range, A1, all the way through to the new update coming this year, A14. So the A14 chip is going to be what these new ARM chips are based off. And it's interesting because Apple used to use PowerPC processors, and then in 2006 they moved to Intel, which just the promise of Intel's power and capability in their chips is what drew them to them. And it's interesting because they're looking to go towards these ARM chips mainly because Intel has been having some problems with new processors and things like that. What are your opinions?
So what's the difference between an Intel and an ARM chip?
Well, there is some physical differences about how the architecture of the chip, but it really comes down to who produces it. So Intel chips, which they're using currently, are essentially produced by Intel, and ARM chips are produced by Apple. There are some technical things which I think is a bit not to be discussed in this episode. If you guys are interested in it, by all means, go read it. We'll put up some links, but it's about how the computer processes problems, essentially. Mm-hmm. But the nice thing about if Apple produces their own chips is it allows them to have a cycle that they want, so they're not constrained by Intel's life cycle of their chips and stuff like this, about when they produce them, if they have any problems. And it also allows them to do things like top to bottom integration. So it means that they can have up to 40 to 60% better processing power in these chips, as well as better battery life, because they don't have to add things in that they don't need that Intel does automatically into their chips. They can tailor them a bit better, which is nice. But so it's interesting that they're doing it now, along with their new release of the iPad. So Bloomberg sort of has reported that they're going to possibly even start bringing them out by 2021. So that's, next year. Maybe because of the COVID crisis, they might push that back a bit. But there could be 3 new MacBook laptop devices that are coming out by 2021, along with the iPad range. But what do you guys think? A smart move or cost?
What do you think the lineup's going to be? Do you think it's going to be something similar to an i5, like a mid-range, and then something similar to an i7, like a high range? I
don't know. They don't.
One CPU.
They don't really discuss that. I think it'll be more like the iPhones, where it's just one chip, and then I think for the start, for these first 3 that they release, I think it'll probably be the MacBook, which is the base MacBook, probably the MacBook Air, and possibly the 13-inch MacBook Pro will be the first one. I think the
MacBook Air would be a good one from the start with.
Yeah. So the Air is their mid-range Mac laptop. I don't know. I think they've been pushing this whole idea, and not just Apple, but a lot of companies in Microsoft as well has been pushing this idea of the laptop and the tablet are becoming one and / only tablet devices. Because I don't know if you guys saw the new iPad that was released and the new keyboard, but there's all these ads been bouncing around from Apple about, this adult asked this child, like, what are you doing on your laptop? And the kid turns around and goes, what's a laptop? As if like this idea of like a laptop computer is no longer. And I wondered...
Yes. The most hated advertisement in Apple's history.
Yeah, exactly. I wonder if... Are we moving away from laptops, do you think, with like these iPads and two-in-one devices? What do you reckon?
Me personally, it's never going to replace it until the keyboard is as good. And I guess tablets just aren't as powerful yet. The OS. It's just never quite as powerful as a big laptop. And you can see it even in like the Surface laptops. They're just not quite there yet. They're not as modular as a desktop computer, obviously.
I wonder...
I don't know.
I mean, I've had an iPad in the past and I sold it and kept my laptop. I don't know why I didn't like it as much. You know, you can take notes on it. The filing system is not as good at the moment, but that'll get better. But I think they're just used for such different things. Like, you know, I used my iPad for like a bit of drawing and a bit of note taking, but the typing is just not the same.
No, especially if you don't have a physical keyboard. Honestly, that's one of the biggest things for me. But yeah, I don't know. I don't see laptops going. I don't see it happening.
I think it's really close. Like you look at some of the Surface lamps now. Like, admittedly, when they first came out, they had a lot of potential, but Microsoft was in that really weird stage where they had really good ideas, but they weren't really good at implementing them properly. But you look at some of the newer ones, and you look at some of the comments from people like Linus and MKBHD. They're almost there. They're closer than they've ever been, and I think within the next maybe 5 years, I wouldn't be surprised if most people are running something pretty close to a hybrid, if not.
If not just a straight up
one device. Yeah.
Am I correct in saying that one of the biggest sort of things holding them back is heat?
Well, so that's possibly so that's this ARM chip research will possibly move across there as well, because they do use Apple, like I was saying before, Apple builds their own chips for the iPad anyway. But this new progression into laptops using their own chips will seriously push some R&D, much needed R&D into their laptops, and that hopefully will spread out across their iPads and possibly even phones as well. But, you know, for years they've had the iPhone as always, it's not about numbers on the page for the iPhone because they have that top to bottom integration. You know, even though they don't have as much RAM as other phones, they're just as quick. And so that's hopefully a possibility for these laptops, is that they'll be more efficient because they're built by Apple. They'll be more integrated because they're built by Apple. They won't have all this bloatware stuff, not so much bloatware for the silicon, but all these other bits of the silicon chip for graphics that aren't needed because they have a separate graphics chip. And so they'll be much more efficient, and hopefully could bring these two devices even closer together.
Do you think this will push the industry a bit more? Because a lot of the software that you use isn't compatible with ARM chips. That's something to remember. That you can't just switch from your everyday software that you use on a computer with an Intel chip straight over to
you're gonna have a bit of trouble sticking Windows on a Mac in the future.
Yeah, absolutely for that. I think so. There's all these new apps, and part of the new software in Apple's lineup is they're trying to bring iPad apps to the Mac App Store. And that with Catalina's, that is, so they obviously they're pushing ARM-based chips from their iPad, so software that runs on that, and run this sort of hybrid skin thing to allow it to run on Intel using some APIs. I think that's obviously going to open that up a lot and allow them to push these apps much quicker, and possibly this cross-platform app. You build one app and it can run on any Apple device. Yeah, Intel sells a lot of chips to Apple, like a lot of chips. Obviously, they sell a lot of chips to everyone, but Intel could take a bit of a hit from this. And I wonder if seeing the performance increase that Apple has, if companies like Microsoft and stuff start developing their own chips as well. Intel could go a similar way to IBM. They just sort of somehow they go from the leaders to no longer.
I don't think so. I think that'd be very drastic. Intel, technology-wise, have been leading in, processors for so long, and I don't think it would be too out of this world to think that Intel could, change up the design of their processors to work like that. But I guess when I think about Apple, it's not so much that it's like, oh, it's the most powerful processor, it's the most powerful computer. It's that it runs well. And if they can optimize it well to work with their OS, that'd probably work a fair bit. It might even work better than Intel processors on their computers. Yeah. It might not be as powerful, or there might not be as many cores as an Intel thing, but if they can make OS X run
as efficiently,
or more efficiently even. I mean, that's one of the biggest points of power in
the average
iPhones.
consumer. I mean, they're not going to notice the difference. But if Apple is taking home all of the profit, it seems like an obvious move sort of thing. But I mean, then it comes down to how fast is your internet speeds. It sort of comes down to a bit of that. But I don't know, maybe we need to speed up the internet before we speed up the computers that are running it. Anyway, so that's from Apple. That's what they've been working on, and I'm hoping that COVID doesn't get too much in the way. It only gets pushed back by a little bit. But anyway, what's been going on in the world of tech?
So talking about internet speeds, down in Melbourne, the Institute of Technology down there and Monash Uni did a little collab lately. So they set up a 75-kilometre loop of fibre optic. And they broke the record for a single fibre optic connection, and it could handle over 40 terabytes a second using a single chip. That's
quite a lot. That is... How much faster is that than current sort of speeds?
Yeah, so it's 100 times faster than any single device currently operating on the NBN network. So it's quite a bump. And this is, what I mean small, this is a fingernail-sized chip.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah. Without going too much into the super technical electrical engineering details, they're calling it a microcomb. And essentially what it does is it replaces a set of 80 lasers down to a single piece of equipment. When enough light hits the sensor, it converts that single light into multiple rainbows throughout the wavelength. So it essentially amplifies the signal. And this will give it more bandwidth to send its 40 terabytes a second through this 75-kilometre loop.
Yeah, wow. Okay, and so this is I presume this is eventually, who knows how many years down the track, going to make its way into not consumer grade, but business grade, hardware for the internet?
Yeah, so they were talking, obviously, through some more R&D and a number of more years of research. Their first thing will be data centers. They're going to work on making it more flexible and simple to run. But I do see a future where this could be in every household.
Yeah, wow.
Maybe not quite the 40 terabytes a second, but I wouldn't be surprised if it wasn't too far off. Which would be great for Australia because our internet is, how can I put this nicely? Average?
Not very good.
It's on the lower end of the speed spectrum, isn't it?
Yes.
Well, it's exciting. It's being developed in Australia. Hopefully, we can possibly get some patents on that. And yeah. Do you think it's those kind of speeds are needed Like, I mean, you know, obviously we'd like quicker internet, but that's absurdly fast.
Well, you look back in history and you know, people were like, oh my gosh, a gig of random access memory, RAM? Why would you need a gig of RAM? And
I remember 10 years ago thinking that over 8 gigs of RAM on your computer was absurd.
And now you've got
why would you ever need over 8 gigs of RAM?
Yeah, well, like the new Mac, I think, just comes in with the top spec at 1.5 terabytes of RAM.
Yeah, and you know, way future down the track, we were talking about Neuralink last week or the week before. That's the type of stuff where you're going to need very high bandwidth. The Internet of Things, or your connected devices, your driverless cars, all this type of stuff is going to need
very high bandwidth internet.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, possibly a future for it, but it's exciting. It's exciting. It's impressive that even like now we're still, you go, you're talking about these things and you're like, how can you innovate anymore? How can you get any faster? And then something like this comes out and you go, oh, yeah, okay, that's how. Wow, that's very fast. Interesting. Wow.
Well, yeah.
Maybe the combined of that and these new Apple chips, you could have quite a system on your hand.
Well, that's the thing. To get these type of speeds, you not only need the network that can handle it, but you also need the hardware in your computer.
Yeah.
It's not like you've got a silver bullet. Like the whole thing, the whole line from your device to the data center to the entire network needs to be at the same speed. It's one of those classic things where your weakest link is the speed at which you'll progress.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you can't quite imagine that kind of speed, can you? Like movies downloading.
What was it? The article cites that it'd be, I think it was 1,000 HD movies in a second.
God, wouldn't that be nice? Yeah, that's rather fast.
I guess that's most useful for a provider level. Maybe a provider level application rather than just going to your home. Well, that's nuts. Once you know things like the next technology for resolution and TV wise is 8K. That's starting to roll out now. That would be that's 4 times the size of a 4K file, I guess. If you're talking pixel wise, right? How soon will it be before we're using 16K or 20K screens?
Yeah. I guess it begs the question: is it needed at that point? If you can't see those pixels, I guess just innovation for the sake of innovation, though. But I mean, the other thing at the moment, which is being brought up a lot, especially because of COVID, is the whole tracking, being tracked. Is there? I last week Apple and Google came out and said about they're going to open up some APIs for these government tracking apps. But why are we so scared about tracking? Are we being tracked all the time, or?
Yeah. Well, no. Right now, everyone's being tracked already. A lot of the arguments against not wanting to use those applications is, the government's going to know where I am. The corporations are going to know my location, my data. But when I don't know, the government already knows where you are. These companies already know where you are. Google, if you go into your Google location history, it'll show you everywhere you've walked.
Really?
Everywhere you've been in the last, I think it'll show you up to a month, and then there are like yearly, I've gotten at least your yearly, what is it?
Like distance
your
travel
yearly,
or whatever.
Yeah, your distance traveled, your location.
I've got about 5 years of data.
Is that
if you look back.
Is that automatically on?
Automatically, yes.
So it's an opt-out sort of system.
It is an opt-out system.
So why are we so angry at why are we so scared of our government having this data when, Google already has it? Why are we scared of that?
I guess that's getting into that's sort of more of the political side of it. If you're living in a Western country, you're most likely, working around a liberal sort of system. You want personal freedoms. You don't want the government interrupting you, and you're doing, whatever you can do whatever you want to do. You're a free person. It's why a lot of people have problems with China. They track everyone. They're using a lot of surveillance. If you look at what they sort of do, it's not a very free country to be in. You can't say what you want. They control your internet. That's what people want. That's what people don't want. And I guess a government having that sort of information about its citizens is a worrying thing. I'm personally of the view that you shouldn't be letting the corporations have that sort of, that sort of information about you.
But is that just your physical location that you're scared that they have, or is it more than that? So, like, where else? Google knows where you are physically, but are you being tracked in other ways on the internet?
I mean, it's it's been insidious. Companies will know nearly everything about you. If you use Google Chrome as your browser, which I do, I'm sure most people do, it'll keep track of your browsing history. Google will know what you're searching. Google will know what you're interested in. Google knows what websites you're on, who you talk to.
And how do they get this information? How do they acquire this information? Because I don't remember ever signing up and saying, track what sites I'm on.
Oh, well, if you're using Google Chrome, it's already doing it. It's built into the browser.
Do you think this is a good or a bad thing?
Well, it's all up to the companies that are doing it, isn't it? How they're going to use it. A big example of it getting a bit out of control, I'd say, is looking at what Amazon's doing. They're not quite there yet. They haven't dominated the world yet, but they're getting there. You guys would know about Alexa, right? The personal assistant.
Yeah.
You have that thing on in your house, and it's going to eavesdrop on you. It's going to know what you're saying, what you're talking about with your family.
Do you think
Not
it
to
is
say that
listening,
your mobile phone doesn't do that already, though.
Do you think it is listening constantly, though, or it's only when you give these key hot words that it is?
Oh, well, from memory, it is always working. As long as that thing's plugged in, it's listening. It's not necessarily recording, but it will record. It will record your, keywords that it picks up, and it'll record you. It'll record these things, and then it'll be able to, personalize your Amazon store, and it'll remind you to buy certain things. It might know when you're running out of toilet paper or milk. And this sort of technology would tie in with things like smart fridges, your phone, your Amazon account that you already have. If you get, you can look into your Alexa's settings, and there will be, there's a history, and you can check all the recordings that Alexa will have. I
would like making a note, though, that the reason that these devices and our online services like Google and Amazon are so good is because they need this data to be able to train their devices. So it's a bit of a twofold situation. You know, you want the latest technology, you want the best devices, you want Google to know, you want to be able to find, you know, what you're searching for as fast as you can. But the only way that these systems can learn that is by watching and listening to you.
Yeah, of course. It's important to say that this sort of stuff is not necessarily, done with bad intent. It's not necessarily a bad thing. It can be used, in good ways. It can personalize what you're seeing. It can improve your internet browsing, experience. You're online and you don't want to see stuff that you're not interested in.
Sorry, that brings up a good point, because everyone gets all annoyed that, these pop-up ads are listening to me and why are they tracking where I'm going on the internet and stuff. But, when those pop-up ads are there because they find out what you want and like, and then show you those things so you might buy them. But, I mean, there's no point seeing stuff you don't want to look at. Like, there's no point me looking at, lipstick or whatever, because I'm not interested in buying lipstick. Whereas things like drones and stuff like that pop up, obviously I'm interested in them. So, I mean, it seems rather useless if these did just pop-ups were not tailored towards you, wouldn't it?
Of course. I would say that 90% of the use of this data is, acceptable. It's fine. It's not necessarily infringing on your privacy. Google's not looking at your browsing history individually and going, oh yes, Ben's really interested in computers, let's give him computer ads. It's an automatic thing. There's AI systems in place that will look at browsing history and automatically assign ads. It's not necessarily a bad thing. And 90% or whatever percent of the use of this data probably isn't bad and isn't going to affect you poorly, but it's the fact that this information is being tracked. If it ever leaks.
Yeah. You also got to remember that these services are free as well. So even though there are big companies with a lot of money, they still have to provide a financial benefit to their shareholders. So they can't just make a business out of nothing. They've got to make their money somehow. And doing that is through ads a lot of the times, as sad as it is. And I'm sure a lot of these companies would prefer a different way to make money. But if you want to get your product out there, then ads is a lot of the times the easiest way to do that and to make money, Yeah, no, it's interesting. But, I mean, it's sort of, I guess a lot of people don't really think about it. They just push it to the back or just don't even know about it straight up. But
it won't affect 99% of people.
I mean, it only really pops up when something goes wrong, like you say, something gets hacked or someone does something really bad and Facebook sells data or whatever the headlines pop up to be. But it's sort of, they get brought up, in like this crisis when the government wants to track you and everyone gets all up in arms about the government tracking you for certain reasons, but they don't really think about that they're actually being tracked everywhere on the internet, always using cookies and things like this. But no, it's interesting. But with this high-speed internet, maybe we'll be tracked even faster, eh?
Even faster, and in more creative ways.
Yeah, exactly. Well, it was good to speak to you guys this week. But if anyone's interested in anything we've talked about, we'll have some links down the description in the show notes about the Apple ARM chips that are coming out, rumoured to be coming out from Apple, and these high-speed internet and how you're possibly being tracked, and maybe some ways you can go and look at, especially with Google data, where you're being tracked at the moment in your physical locations. But it was good to speak to you boys, and catch you guys next week.
Yeah, catch you next week.
All right, see ya.
All right, boys, see you later.